This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, we now bring you a discussion on India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement. The participants are Sheel Kant Sharma, former Senior Ambassador, and Gauran Dhawanlal, AIR Correspondent.
Hello and welcome to our program. We are delighted to have with us today Mr. Sheel Kant Sharma, the former Senior Ambassador. And sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So sir, the India-Australian Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement has been signed, ratified by their parliament, and I think also done from every quarter. It was a unanimous agreement that this should go through. So what does it spell out for both countries, just as a broader perspective before we move into details?
The speed with which it has been done ever since Albanese government came, and in April and now it is November, it shows the transformation of relationship between India and Australia. It is on a much better strategic footing, and the announcement made by the Prime Minister of Australia a few days back when the Parliament passed this bill was indicative of this. And then our PM's announcement also emphasizes the comprehensive strategic partnership. So this Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement of a piece with a larger bilateral relationship, which is strategic in nature and is going to be comprehensive. There is the CECA, the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement,
right,
which started discussion started in 2011. Then it fell into the back burner. Now it has been taken up. So it is also expected that in the new year they will start work on the CECA. So this is a kind of it paves the way for a much larger relationship.
And also, so it was signed on the 2nd of April in 22 this year, and now it's moving this fast. And what do you think should be the timeline when it's actually being implemented now?
I think it is going to be implemented by end of December, early January. There is the Executive Council which will do the pro forma work, and then it will get going. So these tariff lines which are open now for duty-free access for Indian goods to Australia,
right,
and Australian goods and services to India, they will start working beginning of the next year. And as our Minister of Commerce indicated, our trade relationship might go from $24 billion to something like $45 to $50 billion,
right,
which is almost doubling in the coming 5 years.
Absolutely, and these are huge numbers. And when we look at actually boosting India's economic growth and trying to move it faster towards being a developed country, I think this is an important agreement.
Yes, and the Australian Prime Minister mentioned this, that this agreement actually will link Australia, will open Australia to 1.5 billion market.
Right.
One of the fastest growing economies. So they also look up to India, and the exports to India which they have in mind are already there, but maybe tariff lines will increase because we are now reducing duty. We are going to make it duty-free for 70% of these tariff lines.
Right, and they're saying duties on 100% of tariff lines will be eliminated. And of course...
For India, yes.
Absolutely, Jay. And also when we look at, this signing of this agreement and finally it's being passed by Parliament, is the first trade agreement for India with a developed country after nearly a decade. That by itself is an important indication.
Yes, but we have done a trade agreement with UAE, which you might call it what you like.
Okay.
But it's a very important economy, and its size and its export and its international trade profile is very significant.
Okay.
And we have a FTA now working with the UAE. Our foreign minister had a meeting with his counterpart, and he emphasized that point. So we are also in the RCEP, we are working on FTAs with all the other countries except China and New Zealand. So with ASEAN, we are working on an FTA. I think we have an FTA with ASEAN. And with Japan and South Korea also. Vistas, which we are going to trade on.
Right.
India did not join RCEP because of China. But with other countries, we have shown through these FTAs that we have, we are open to very free and intensive trade and economic partnership.
Right, and India is also a manufacturing hub. In fact, 96% of what we get from Australia, what Australia actually sends out are raw materials. So I think a lot of industries, which are the industries you think will primarily benefit?
Australian coal has been used by our thermal power reactors, and it's also used for other industries, and I think even fertilizers have certain element of it. Then they also export to us aluminium oxide in a very large measure, which again is part of our aluminium smelting industry. Then there is also gold import from Australia.
Okay.
So which we use to do value addition, and then we re-export. And we have gems and jewelry which are part of our export lines to Australia, and we import gold from them.
So we would be actually getting in high value, products, exporting high value products and reaching a high value market in Australia, which would then actually boost up our numbers.
Yes, actually Australia's relationship with China, for instance, if you see, it gives you a perspective. They have been exporting iron ore and coal and some petroleum products to China, and their exports are something like $159 billion.
Okay.
So it's a relationship where it is one relationship of Australia where their exports are more and the imports are less. They are importing less from China. Mm-hmm. Now, with us, the relationship will be more even, because services export, for instance, from Australia, education. Now, this is 118,000 or 116,000 Indians who are students who are studying there. Now, this is a very large component of the services which Australia, exports.
Right.
And they are going to facilitate this process by relaxing visas and by, a number of announcements they have made.
Right.
That
many subcategories and subclasses have been included. You're right.
Annual quota of 1,800 for yoga teachers and Indian chefs, and post-study work visa for 18 months to 4 years for Indian students. This will benefit more than 100,000 Indian students. And work and holiday visa arrangement for young professionals. These facilitations are mark of complete openness and trust in each other's country. This is, I would say, this reflects enormous uplift in the mutual confidence between India and Australia.
Right. It's a great signal. Absolutely. You're absolutely right, sir. It's a great signal. In terms of how we see job creation within India because of this, where do you see that impacting? Because some of the industries that are going to get a boost in our exports to Australia are labor intensive, our gems and jewelry areas, and even the service sector, the IT, ITES.
Yes, actually the areas which have been mentioned, they are all directly connected. Textiles, leather, footwear, and gems and jewelry, as you mentioned, and machinery, engineering machinery. This will have impact on the Australian market. And this is something which is first time Australia has done, and it's not done for any other country.
That's a great beginning.
Opening this 100% line of tariff lines. This is new. And labor-intensive sectors, textiles and apparel, agricultural and fish products, furniture, sports goods, jewelry, machinery, and electrical goods.
Right.
Now, each of them is going to benefit our industrial, our manufacturing sector.
In fact, so when we look at employment generation, that's one of the key areas that India is looking at, even domestically, to see more stability. And we are looking at huge numbers in the future. Employment is a critical factor that has to walk hand in hand. And I think that will be strongly supported.
That's true. The, export-oriented employment has its own work. Look at what China has done. Its growth was largely because of export-oriented employment. And our neighborhood also, many of these countries have benefited. We, for instance, have been somewhat hesitant and dilly-dallying in these matters. But now under PM's leadership, Make in India and manufacturing sector should be given a boost. And the private sector is also increasingly participating in this whole process. So this export-oriented labor market in India, employment in India, is going to be a big boost for our economy.
Right.
And the relationship with Australia has these compatibilities. They sell us is compatible for us, and what we give them is also beneficial to them. So in the Asian region and South Pacific, this will be a very good relationship. 45 to 50 billion trade 5 years. And I am ambitious. I feel that on that track, the figures can be much faster and more. because Australia is a huge economy and it has much more potential so far. And then, Australia is also in some of these niche sectors in high technology and the frontiers of, today's challenging research.
Right.
They are doing good work. So we should also work in that area. There should be cooperation. I suppose that will come under the CECA, under the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, where we will enlarge this interface between two countries to get to even the frontiers of technology. They have developed a number of good things on their own, and we should cooperate.
Both of us have a lot to gain, both countries. When we are talking Australia as a market, it's also a very quality-sensitive market. And somewhere, because of this, the pressure on us to produce quality items, to make sure that we are actually second to none in the world, I think that will really lift up our production.
Yes, quality is very important because we have seen how our economies have become dumping yards by the Chinese manufacturers. They sell low-quality stuff, and everyone is reeling under that. In the Asian region, Vietnam, India, Philippines, they all complain that the goods that Chinese send, they are not of the quality, and their strategic impact is on lowering the worth of domestic industry.
Right.
So to come up to meet this challenge, we should have linkages which have an accent on quality and which go on value addition. So this India-Australia trade relationship, it enhances value addition on both sides.
In terms of the diplomatic circuit, in terms of how we see countries, how is this being received? Is it actually being viewed with any particular lens? Because India is actually we are reaping a demographic dividend, we are a huge market, and we are really moving up. So how is this being viewed internationally?
I see it as the fast-track movement between India and Australia as part of the mushrooming of the Quad agenda, which which we have taken up at the highest level. There have been 2 summits, and then there have been more meetings. So I think this is one area. And we are also involved with Australia on the other strategic dimensions like the Malabar exercises, and we've also started working with Australia on defense-related cooperation. So on the whole, this relationship is imbued with a lot of significance, and the international community will take notice of this. We are cooperating on many of these major issues like, climate change, for instance. The scope for India and Australia to work together is very, very large.
It's tremendous, right.
And then on the Asia-Pacific region or Indo-Pacific region, we are looking for rules-based, international rules-based behavior of states and free lanes of communications, unhindered sea trade. Now, in these, India and Australia are on the same page.
Right.
And as you know, the distance between, actually if you see in terms of direct distance, between Chennai and Perth is not as much as it appears on the map. So as one Australian said that the distance between Perth and Chennai is probably less than the distance between Sydney and some of these Southeast Asian nations.
Right.
Because it's a vast continent, and the most developed parts are in the south of it, but we have distance through the Indian Ocean connection. If you travel to Australia, there is an old connection culturally also. Cricket is of course one of the main items, and the language, which is we share the same language, and the good legacy of the colonial era is also there.
We're Commonwealth states, so right? Yeah.
When you see the Canberra Parliament, and the Australians say that this was actually the design, the original architecture was conceived in London, and it was meant for India.
That's right.
But the ship went to Australia.
That's right.
Went to Australia.
Yes.
So it is that kind of linkages which are supportive of this bilateral relationship.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, you're right. We are talking of connections. This agreement is a huge connection, making up for a lot of lost time. Also, there's no way but the sky's the limit. You've put it also very, very well in covering the different aspects that it's going to impact both the countries. Thank you so much, Mr. Shilkant Ji, for joining us in our program. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement. The participants were Shilkant Sharma, former Senior Ambassador and Gaurang Dhawanlal, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio.